I'm just going to read to you from Aleister Crowley's book, Magick, often referred to as Magick in Theory and Practice. The magical images of the gods of Egypt should be made thoroughly familiar. This can be done by studying them in any public museum, or in books such as may be accessible to the student. They should then be carefully painted by him, both from the model and from memory. The student, seated in the God position, or the characteristic attitude of the God desired, should then imagine his image as coinciding with his own body, or as enveloping it. This must be practiced until mastery of the image is attained, and an identity with it and with the God experienced. It is a matter for very great regret that no simple and certain test of success in this practice actually exists. So basically, if we were examining a student of magic, we have no way of knowing whether they've actually attained this or not. What Crowley writes very clearly is that you can't just imagine it. You need to familiarize yourself with them in every form, for God forms, and draw them, paint them, and so on. Think about how you would, if you're raised, say in the UK, you'd be very familiar with Christian gods and stories. You did the nativity play, you've seen the movies, you sung the songs at school, you may have done school assemblies where you did little reenactments. Basically, there's a lot of familiarization with these different things as we go, so therefore we have quite a strong identity, familiarization with, say, the baby Jesus, with the crucified Jesus, especially if you're Catholic, and so on. So it takes practice and repetition over time. There's another part to this. The vibration of God names. As further means of identifying the human consciousness with that pure portion of which man calls by the name of the same God, let him act thus. Stand with arms outstretched, as I've demonstrated before, breathing deeply through the nostrils, imagining the name of the God desired entering with the breath. Let that name descend slowly from the lungs to the heart, the solar plexus, the navel, the generative organs, and so to the feet. That moment that it appears to touch the feet, quickly advance the left foot about 12 inches, throw forward the body, and let the hands, drawn back to the side of the eyes, shoot out, so that you are standing in the typical position of the god Horus, and at the same time imagine the name as rushing up and through the body, while you breathe it out through the nostrils with the air which has been until then retained in the lungs. All this must be done with all the force with which you are capable. Then withdraw the left foot and place the right forefinger upon the lips, so that you're in the characteristic position of the god Harpocrates. It is a sign that the student is performing this correctly when a single vibration entirely exhausts his physical strength. It should cause him to grow hot all over or to perspire violently, and it should so weaken him that he will find it difficult to remain standing. It is a sign of success, though only by the student himself is it perceived, when he hears the name of the god vehemently roared forth, as if by the concourse of 10,000 thunders, and it should appear to him as if that great voice proceeded from the universe and not from himself. In both of the above practices, all consciousness of anything but the God form and name should be absolutely blotted out, and the longer it takes for normal perception to return, the better. So what we now have is something actually quite different to how the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is classically practiced. As I've said before, generally within group workings, the lesser banishing ritual is something that is used to precede a greater ritual and then to close at the end. It often is serving as a punctuation point between normal consciousness and magical consciousness, and then back to normal consciousness again. And quite often it is simply done as a demarcation. So here we have a whole bunch of misfits on a Sunday afternoon who meet in somebody's living room to basically pretend to be magicians. And now what we're going to do is begin being magicians by beginning with the lesser banishing ritual. But what we can actually start to see from Crowley's writing is that actually this is much more an invocation than it is the banishing. This is much more an invocation of archetypal god forms to bring them present into our experience, as well as aligning ourselves with the elemental practices as well. This should alter consciousness quite dramatically. This is not something that is a set of empty and meaningless gestures that basically give us standing amongst our peer group within our magical group or magical lodge. If you look at the history of most magical societies, this is pretty much how they operate. You have grades that are given away often prematurely to people who don't really have the personal qualities that we would expect of that grade, and quite often they're status things that are given away. Now, what can start to happen is people go chasing the grade of the order as badges of honor, badges of status, so they can boast amongst their friends or even just to themselves that they are somebody of importance because they've attained the 4th degree or whatever it is. And actually the inner work that is the basis of all of this is actually ignored. It's lost very quickly. Now this is very, very common to most mystical societies, whether you're looking at Buddhists or thelemic magicians or chaos magicians. Quite often the status trappings, the toys, the kits, the quality of the robes the person has, how amazing their wand looks, takes precedent. I'm going to urge you, don't go down that route. Focus on the inner transformations. How other people are doing in their grades and all the rest of it is their affair. Focus on your own development here rather than get caught up on they're doing better than I am because they've got a better grade or they've got a nicer cup. You get the idea. So what Crowley now gives us is a invocatory practice which isn't going to come very easy. I recommend you begin practicing the lesser banishing ritual in the classic form that is usually practiced, with the intonation out loud of those god names in whatever way that you intone them. Because what you need to have is a great familiarity with that sound. What I kind of think would be interesting is to hire 100 professional singers or actors, and we have 100 in each of the quarters, and that when we practice the ritual and we go to the east and I've done my banishing pentagram and now I do my gesture, what is going to come roaring back from the east will be YHVH or Jehovah, rather than me having me go YHVH. I have 100 professional performers roar it back at me. Potentially I could just imagine that myself. I don't need to hire those people. I can actually imagine how that would sound. Now what I can do is build it up from there. I can draw my pentagram. I now breathe in through my nose. It's not through the mouth, it's through the nose. And I'm taking in YHVH as a god name. And so I can visualize it in whatever substance form, but I want to hear it. And how do you visualize a name? Who knows? Maybe you see the letters, and those letters come in through my nostrils and are now coming down into my lungs, and then as I breathe in, down to my toes, and now I'm breathing out with a noise. If you've got a bit of a cold, it might get messy. I'm going to breathe that out as my arms go forward, and I'm going to hear that choir, that professional troupe of people give the name back. Now I've just got the beginnings of it, because what I want to have is I want to just have that sound. I get rid of the choir, I now have the sound. I'm going to hear the universe roar it back. You see, there's a difference between, in my internal experience, me imagine I'm saying something and me imagining to hear something. So in my mind, for example, I can sing myself a song, or I can hear the artist singing the song. It's slightly different in the quality of the experience. So what I recommend you do is familiarize yourself first of all with the God names, and then start to hear them coming back. But it comes out of that element of the universe, and it roars as you breathe out. So now we have a practice that's slightly less awkward if we're doing this in a small apartment, because I don't have to go YHVH. I don't have to do that anymore. What I can actually do is as I'm visualizing and hearing the roar come back. Remember, if all I'm doing is breathing out and throwing my arms forward, we're not actually achieving the thing. So that's the thing now to start thinking about, is how now can I practice bringing the God name in through my nostrils, into my lungs, then down through my organs. The name comes through me and is me. I am the name is me. I become one and the same. And then I breathe out and hear the roar of that name come from the universe. Kind of changes the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. This is much more a God invocation to balance up, basically bringing in much bigger, powerful forces within ourselves as part of our opening ritual before we then proceed into our magical practice. That's your next thing to practice. Good luck with this one. For a lot of magicians, I have to say, this comes as quite new information. That is sitting in those magic books and has been since they were published by Crowley himself. I was introduced that concept myself in a recent meeting, and I was like, ooh, I'd missed that one, as had pretty much everybody else. I'm eternally grateful for that little distinction to be pointed out to me, because I said at the time, for me now, that one detail of hearing the name roaring out of the universe rather than me trying to put it into the universe is a subtle distinction, but it changes the entire ritual of the pentagram in terms of its import and actually what we're doing with it. So good luck practicing this one.